All right, here we go. All right, welcome to Success Center's Virtual Equity for Industry Workshop. Before we get started, I want to thank all of you who have joined us tonight. And I want to give a special thanks out to our social media team, Sam Kay and Joaquin Rinaldi. They have been working with us tirelessly trying to get this broadcast up and out for you to view. The next person I want to thank is Brian Nashid, who is the Equity for Industry Program Career Advisor at Success Centers. Brian is my right and left hand. And so I am very thankful to all of them for getting this up and running. And also, I would like to thank Liz Jackson Simpson, our CEO, for supporting these Equity for Industry Program workshops, because this is in the cannabis space. We're not selling cannabis, but we're teaching and hoping that you are picking up these wonderful tools that we are providing for you. I also want to say that this is our first time out, so this is a pilot for us. This is a first, so congratulations for coming in to let us know how wonderful we are here at Success Centers. And so you may have some delay, or if something happens, we're going to send everyone that registered with us for this workshop a copy of Marie's presentation later. So don't get discouraged. We are going to follow up with that for you. Let's see, I'm trying to work here with my phone. So tonight's presentation, we're going to have Marie Montmarquet, who has been very helpful to Success Center. She has been advising us on how to get more great presentations like the one she's about to give. And I just want to speak a little bit about it because, this is a cash handling business presentation. Cannabis in most forms is a cash handling business. So this is going to help you with your standard operating procedures. So let me talk a little bit about Marie. Marie oversees 8 active licenses from cultivation to retail, including all cash handling and compliance aspects. She can give very detailed, experienced overview of the cash problems and solutions for the industry. And so without further ado, I'd like to bring on Miss Marie.
Hello, thank you so much, Miss Ange. I just wanted to say thank you again to the tech team and Brian, of course, and welcome everyone to our first rendition of our beta test run of our online seminar. And I'm going to share my screen with everyone. So I'm happy that we'll be able to reach everyone in a new way, and hope everybody is staying safe. So perfect. We're just going to go into the overview again. All right. So we're going to cover the pros and cons, like we spoke about, standard operating procedures, cash payments, banking options, cash payroll, taxes, the fun stuff, security protocols, and robbery procedures, which is super important. And like I mentioned before, a lot of this is BCC specific procedural requirements, and it'll be in the information that they ask you for to give you a permit. So it's really important information. And it might be super pertinent to what you want to do. It might be semi-pertinent, but all of it is very, very important. And you might want to add and delete things as you create your own documentation for the BCC. So then we're going to go over cash on delivery versus net terms. And finally, tips and tricks, going over everything. And like I said with the chat, just ask questions anytime, and we will answer those questions as we go. All right, so pros versus cons. Being an all-cash business has its advantages and disadvantages, of course. So, pros: immediate cash flow for all your accounts receivable. No need to wait for checks to clear or a credit card transaction to process, which is really great. You're not going to have to wait. All the cash for your business is always going to be on hand, which is an extreme asset. It eliminates fraud possibilities, bounced or insufficient that people might write your business, bogus credit card or debit card transactions, and chargebacks from credit card users, which is super important if you have some sort of customer facing business and you were to get credit card transactions, your bank name would not match your business name, and customers would have chargebacks on the regular basis just because they wouldn't recognize the business that was charging their credit card. It also removes credit card related fees, which is a really big point. That reduces your net profit on every transaction by a lot. They usually are anywhere starting from 3 to 5% if you have a retail location. If you want mobile processing, you can be as high as 12%, which is extremely expensive. And just an example, if you had a mobile delivery service, you would then also have to buy the hardware, which could be around $500 for every single mobile transaction unit that you have to give your drivers. So all of these things come in mind when you're thinking about the pros of being an all cash business, that you don't have to deal with a lot of this hardware and software and third party. Every single time money moves, of course, they're going to try and take a piece of it. So cash is king, of course. And then on the cons, which there are plenty of, number one, the main one I would always say is security risks, which is the main thing about carrying large sums of cash around anytime. It's a very high risk. And for all of us in the cannabis business, once you have an active permit on the BCC website, they list your address. So it's very important to make sure that the address that is listed has the best security procedures that are available. And you're going to want to have that building, all of the cameras on at all times, monitoring services, all the things that we'll get into later. But you're really going to want to make sure that that address is protected, because you're really a high risk since it's visible to the public. Another thing is increased logistics to make tax payments. So you have some tax payments that have to be made in Sacramento, other tax payments that are going to go to your local jurisdiction. You're not going to be able to write a check. You're not going to be able to transfer the funds or pay online on their local city's website. You are going to have to go down to the office and schedule that and take time out of your business to do so. Increased accounting procedures and paperwork requiring cash movement. So of course, anytime cash moves, it's going to cost you money. The more that you have to move cash, it's going to cost you more money. But the securest thing to do, of course, is to have really good procedures in place that do move the cash into a secure place and not have all of your cash in one place. That would be one of the worst things you would want. So you are going to have a lot of increased accounting procedures when it comes down to every process of your business, even something as specific as payroll. That's going to have a lot of increased accounting procedures. Another thing is just customers, as we know, they don't carry a lot of cash. The average person doesn't carry a lot of cash, and that's going to mean you're going to have smaller order averages if you have a customer-facing business. Another issue is transactions over $10,000 require reporting to the IRS with the Form 8300. It's not an issue that you have to report that. The thing about reporting more and more forms to the IRS, of course, mean the higher scrutiny that comes with your business and the higher chance of you getting audited. So of course, having an all cash business is going to then lead to a higher chance of being audited, which goes into the procedural aspects really being accurate and reported correctly. So when you do get audited, you have the audit.
Got one question from Tucker. Tucker asks, is the permit holder allowed to own and carry a firearm?
Hi, Tucker. So it's kind of like a double question. So the first answer is like you as a citizen can, abide by your Fourth Amendment right and have a firearm and have your name on a license of a cannabis business. I have plenty of experiences with people. I personally don't have a firearm, but I know other business owners in California that have a live scan with the state of California, which you have to go through, and they were issued cannabis permits, and they have a private registered legal firearm. If you in your business or outside of your business, if you wanted security that was armed, then that's a different scenario. And you might see armed security at retail locations, and you'd want to really consult with the city to be specific on if it's okay for those security guards to be armed, number one, and where the city allows them to stand. So they might not be allowed inside your store, they might have to stand outside your store, things like that. But it really comes down to the local jurisdiction when it comes to armed security, but it's definitely an option. And businesses that do, over 200-300 people a day for retail have multiple armed security guards and even keep armed security there 24 hours. The BCC dictates that you don't have to have security in general unless you have a retail shop. So just to answer the question. I hope that answered the question. But thank you. Any other questions, let us know. All right, the importance of cash handling. So obviously this is very important, as we all know. If at any point your cash handling is done incorrectly, it affects every part of your business. Cannot stress that enough. Accurate financials are the key to every transaction. Mismanagement of cash will affect the business payroll, taxes, vendor payments, investor payments, even your rent payments. And these are things to think about, even something as small as if you're a customer-facing business, if you take in change, coins, what do you do with those coins? How do you account for those coins in a way that's efficient for your business? But even something that small is very, very important to account for. No matter what type of cannabis business you run, every single type, understanding how to manage each cent coming in and out of your business is a basic and required necessity. Any and all issues must be immediately reported and investigated, is what that says underneath there. Yeah, and investigated. So this is just a good overview of understanding, like, you will not be able to successfully run your business if you do not have full control on the cash coming in and out of your business, and not on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, and having checks and balances for all the people in your business that are touching cash. Super important. All right, so now we kind of get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty. Cash handling SOPs, or standard operating procedures. You'll hear this word over and over and over again, SOPs. Cash protection protocols. So when it comes to cash, it's always important to prepare for the worst. That's what the Bureau of Cannabis Control wants you to do, because at the end of the day, protecting the cash is how the government gets paid. And that's the most important thing to the government, of course. So they want to see how you're protecting every single dime that comes in and out of your business. And the way that they're able to see that, of course, is by the SOPs that you create for your business. So these are some general cash protection protocols that I would say every business would use, especially specific if you're doing something like delivery. So each business requires a bookkeeper, and I can't stress that enough either. You're going to want to have a bookkeeper your first day you take a dime, even before you take a dime. And that individual will be trained in the various security protocols and cash handling practices. Limited amounts of cash should be held in any one place and on site in general. You're never going to want to have all your cash in one place, like we said before, or a lot of cash on site. It's just very risky. Limited amounts of cash are to be kept out at any given time. Of course, anyone seeing cash should be on a need-to-know basis. If someone sees cash, they should be giving you cash, or you're giving them cash. There should never just be cash sitting out. Limited amounts of cash are kept on site in the safes at any given point in time, like we said. Receipts and records are meticulously kept and stored, both soft, which I call digital copy or soft copy, and hard copies. This we'll talk about over and over again. It's good to have a hard copy, even if you then just take a picture of that hard copy and you upload it somewhere. You are gonna want to have hard copies and soft copies of everything. And then depending upon your security hardware, like you might want to back these things up in multiple places. You might want to have a hard drive, a couple different places that you back up every week that can keep everything digital that you have, as well as hard copies stored in a fire safe. So next, always keep money out of reach of customers. That's a given. Never display large amounts of money. That's a given. Driver reconciliations are to be done behind closed doors in a secure area with the manager at the end of each shift. So even if you are reconciling that money in the morning, it still needs to be put into a bag securely that night behind closed doors in a secure area with someone that is a manager at the end of each shift, because you need accountability throughout the chain. So management and those bags and people signing off and dating are very, very important. And all of that, ideally, like you want all of this done under camera. That's another just crucial thing. So weekly and daily checks should also be made by management to ensure all cash protection rules are being followed. You're not just gonna want to assume that people are following your SOPs. You're gonna want to go behind them and make sure. So cash handling procedures are set up to make any business as a less attractive mark, so to speak, and limit any robber's profit while reducing potential losses. Those are the things that the BCC or your local jurisdiction would want to see in cash protection. They want to see how you're limiting potential losses and protecting the cash. And another thing that I just wanted to add, also you can have protocols in place that like once a driver or once a certain bank till hits a certain amount of money, it's in your SOP to make a drop, almost like at a 7-Eleven. All right. This we have general cash pickup SOPs. So you want to have very, very strict cash pickup schedules. If a vendor is coming to pick up cash, they should never just show up expecting payment. And everyone in your facility should not have access to pay vendors. These are all the things that you really want to limit to a very select amount of people. So if something does go wrong, it's a very small paper trail of who could have touched this money. So thresholds for both time and currency must be utilized when to pick up cash from premise. You can't stress that enough. People cannot just show up to pick up cash. Cash transfers off-site are to be made during daylight hours with more than one person. It's just really good for security. The route chosen to secure the cash must be varied. Of course, you've heard this before. You don't want to go to the same way, the same time, every single time you do a cash drop somewhere. Don't make any stops along the way. Vary the time of day the transfer is made. Disguise the currency bags in plain sight by using different and mundane containers for transfer. And that could be something as simple as putting the cash in a Burger King bag. Just don't walk around with clear bank bags or clear money bags in sight. Vary the personnel during the transfer, if possible. If you can switch that, that's also a good thing to do. Vary the vehicle used, if possible, which can be expensive depending on how many cars you have insured, so you might not be able to do that. When transferring large amounts of cash, consider hiring armed guard services. So we kind of briefly spoke on that earlier, and there's definitely, I know of at least 2 or 3 companies that are doing large cash pickups, and even banks where you can get banks for large cultivation will do large cash pickups. Hardcar is one of just the third parties. So if you are transferring or carrying around cash, let's say you're a distribution company and you're going to pick up a large sum of cash from a farm, you would want a welded safe in your vehicle. If you are dropping off product all day to dispensaries, you would want a welded safe in your vehicle. If you have over, I mean, depending upon your personal, like the insurance you have, I would just say anything over $1,000 in the car at any point, you should get a welded safe in the vehicle. It's just very good to have. And if you have it, your insurance will go down as well. Another thing is making sure you have a proper cash handling template looked over by your accounting team. So everything that we speak about today, you would take that and put into a form by form basis, depending upon what that employee is doing. So if they're a driver, of course, they would get the cash handling SOPs for a driver. If they're a manager, they would get the cash handling SOPs for a manager and so forth. And you would want that template to be looked over by your accounting team to make sure that you have thought of everything that you can possibly think of and add anything else that they might want from their tax specific level. All right. So specialized cash handling SOPs. I say specialized just because these are very specific to permit cash handling. So cash pickups should always be verified by a money counter and counterfeit pin under camera with appropriate staff. We spoke about that. So you're gonna wanna have as many different security checks and balances on the money that you're paying anyone as much as possible. Whether that is the money counter, of course, that's good. The counterfeit pin, great. But doing it under camera is very, very helpful. And some distribution companies are no longer counting money on site. So let's say you have a storefront and someone is coming to pick up cash. Now some distribution companies won't count that cash on site. So you have to do all these things under camera and just be very, very careful, because if that distribution company ever says that you didn't give them the right money, they're going to show you them opening that bank bag on camera that they did at their facility, and your only recourse would be able to show them your camera. So you're going to want to have as many of these things done under camera as possible. So cash should be immediately be placed in a sealed, tamper-proof money bag. I'll say that a lot, super important. The bag should be dated with the appropriate new or old invoices. So the money's owed, whatever money's owed, whatever invoice that money is for, it needs to be noted so it can be credited appropriately. And you also need to have that driver include whether this is a full or a partial payment. This is really, really, really important, because it's very, very easy for your drivers to drop off product without picking up payment. You know, your driver might get to a site, the site said, oh, it's no problem, we talked to Marie, we're gonna pay on the next delivery and take care of both orders. You know, your driver might say, okay, that sounds good. It's based upon your SOPs and how specific you are with that driver to make them accountable for every single transaction, because that would not be ideal for your business. And let's say that company is past due 2 or 3 payments, then that's an issue. So the record of the payment, of course, once again, needs to be in a soft and hard copy for additional accuracy. And you're going to want to create those forms specific for your business. So for accounts on terms, which is where I get into that driver sticky situation, you're going to want to have a collections report, and your driver is going to have to evaluate the collections report prior to each delivery. Make sure you're not delivering product to vendors with outstanding payments without collecting. Cannot stress this enough. You will see brands go out of business because of this. If every storefront in San Francisco owes you 10 grand, that's not going to be good. And if you go to collect and they only pay you 2, that's not going to be good. So you're going to want to make sure that your drivers are absolutely checking that report. And when you really think about it, you have a lot of different people involved in this process, because you have the salesperson who's selling the product to the retailer. Then you have the distribution company delivering that product to the retailer. And if that sales team is very, very zealous and is overselling different things to accounts that have past due balances, which happens all the time, then it's up to that distribution to catch that. And if that distribution doesn't catch that, then you offering terms may be what ends your business, because you cannot extend these terms without getting paid. So this is just another very, very, very important thing to note. Making sure you have all of that, all of the checks and balances throughout your sales team and your distribution team to whatever retailer you're selling to. All right. So now we're going to talk about banking options. So of course, we're talking about this as a cash only business, but we all know there are a couple of banking options out there, and just want to briefly touch on what is available. So banking cannabis in general, just banking cannabis, is very expensive when possible. If you feel that your business would save time and money with a bank account, you can explore those options. It is possible for certain types of cannabis businesses to get bank accounts, and it is more efficient in some cases for these businesses. A good example would be a large cultivation. If you are a large cultivation and every month you're selling 500 pounds of flower and you're selling them for $1,000, that's $500,000 a month in cash that your farm is taking in. It might be worth you looking into a bank account, especially if you're taking that money and putting it into a lot of different places, because you don't want all of that on your farm. Or you're taking it and you're paying payroll and then you're paying your expenses. It just depends on your business. If that money is coming in and after your expenses, you're only left with, let's say, 20 grand, it might not be worth having a bank account. It's all based upon what your business. So some banks do offer what they call high risk accounts. And those include, all the taboo things you can think of, and sometimes cannabis, depending on the bank. If you can provide, because you have to be able to provide all the appropriate financial documentation, including taxes. So if you're a brand new cannabis company, you're probably not going to be able to get a bank account. You have to be able to provide them a lot of information, and usually they want to see years of information. So another thing to think about, of course, is just the cost. It's very, very expensive to have one of these bank accounts. Usually, like, the minimum you will see is about $3,000 a month, but it can be higher than that. It can be percentage based, and they charge additionally for cash pickups. So it's usually a percentage of the gross total. Let's say 3% or 5% of the gross plus $3,000 a month. You're talking, might cost you $100,000 that year to have a bank account. It just depends on if it's worth it. So if you're looking for a bank, I know for cultivation specifically, you can research North Bay Credit Union. They do a pretty extensive check on all parties involved and the business financials, but you would be able to potentially get a bank account there. Sweet. So next slide is just briefly touching on ways to make the cash handling more efficient for your business. So in the beginning of business, I always like to say it's efficiency versus manpower. Normally you have a lot of manpower counting cash with money counters. The more business you do, the more you might want to automate things and look into something like this cash depository box. This is just one super basic example. At trade shows or online, you can find tons of safe companies that are doing different styles of ATM depository boxes depending upon your needs. I just want to touch on this briefly. So another way to add security while reducing human error and saving time is to install a cash depository box inside your premise. Depending on the type of unit, it can be used to deposit funds as well as withdraw funds. The basic unit will accept cash under an employee ID and send electronic receipts. It'll also have a printed receipt option if you want. The more advanced units can pay vendors based on a special order number. All reports are immediately available, and this can save your accounting team a lot of time. So if you have a delivery service and you've got 10 drivers a day, all those drivers could come in, type in their employee ID number, deposit their end-of-day cash or end-of-shift cash, and that machine would then send you a report. Your manager wouldn't have to sit there for hours counting money. The driver wouldn't have to sit there counting money. It would save you time. It would save you money. Also be able to pay vendors. If you were paying a lot of vendors and that was taking up a lot of your time, you could just set it up where the styles of machines that I've seen at trade shows could even just send an email to that vendor when their cash is ready for pickup, and they could come in with their number and pick up the cash. So these are just good information to know that you can streamline some of these cash handling processes. Woo, payroll, cash payroll. So this is one of the most important slides. Of course, always one of the most just heavy with the words. Payroll, though, overall, of course, is extremely important. Not a lot of people work for free. Not a lot of people come back to work if you mess up their payroll. So making sure that you have your payroll under control and accurate at all times is going to be very, very important. Not only that, but paying your taxes accurately for all of the payroll is very important. So this information is just for any business. Employers must withhold all payroll taxes, including federal and state income tax, and FICA, which includes Social Security and Medicare taxes from the employee pay. Any paycheck that you've ever gotten, they had this withdrawn from your paycheck. Employers must also report the amount of withholding for each employee to the IRS. Employers must also report the total of both the employee and the employer portion of all the payroll taxes to the IRS. So for cannabis specifically, like you may have worked as an independent contractor before and had a 1099, that is illegal in cannabis. Cannabis does not allow third parties to do things underneath a cannabis permit. You have to be employed by the permit holder. So employers must report employee income on a W-2 each year. You're not going to have a 1099. Other employment taxes must be paid on employee earnings, including unemployment taxes and state workers' compensation insurance fund payments. You have to get workers' comp for all your employees, period. I actually have a friend who had a delivery service in California and delayed his workers' comp, and he was audited by the BCC. They warned him. They came back, he still did not have workers' comp, and he got a felony for that. He was able to still keep his business, and he had to get rid of all of his employees temporarily, but he literally got a felony for not having state workers' compensation insurance. Employers are required to normally prepay these taxes for your employees. If you pay employee taxes quarterly, you can be subject to late penalties. So it's just the government, again, they expect their money in real time on a lot of these different taxes when it comes to payroll. So if you wait and pay all of your payroll taxes for all of your employees quarterly, you may or may not be subject to late penalties, but you definitely can be. When running payroll, it is perfectly legal to pay employees in cash, just point blank. That's a lot of things people don't, they think you cannot pay your employees cash. You can definitely pay your employees cash. It's a little more inconvenient for them versus direct deposit, of course, but it is perfectly legal minus the payroll taxes. So the payment must be properly recorded and signed by the employee as paid, and all applicable processes must be followed. So I want to touch on this again. I have a funny photo in my phone where one of my businesses, we lost our bank accounts and we were running payroll electronically, and then we had to pay 34 people every payroll in cash. It takes a ton of time, and when you pay those employees, you are going to want to have every check and balance on that payment. If you hand your employee money and you say this is for 24 hours, these are for these days, and they sign, you want to have a soft and hard verification of that payment. Cannot stress that enough. And these are other things that tools like QuickBooks can help you with all the estimates on the taxes. And you're going to want to potentially have some sort of payroll assistance. There's tons of apps out there. We use one called Gusto, and there's different apps even that add scheduling with the payroll together, which is amazingly convenient. So they're clocking in and clocking out in one app, and that app is how they get paid. So it's very, very easy for you to have accountability on your employees to make sure that they're getting paid every time they clocked in with. So GUSTO is the company that I'm familiar with, and T-Sheets, TSHEETS, T-Sheets, those are two that I've used. We switched from Gusto to T-Sheets on some of our companies, but it makes it a lot easier for you to have the schedule and the payroll in one place. And you're gonna wanna have all of the checks and balances for payroll. I cannot stress that enough. If one of your employees comes back and says, hey, you paid me wrong, you're gonna wanna have the information that says, no, I didn't, or yes, I did. And I guarantee you it will happen. You will have an employee say that their paycheck is wrong. All right, so this is super basic, brief overview of paying taxes and fees in cash. So if you have, first things first, like you're gonna have your state taxes and fees. So your annual licensing fee, you're gonna take that to Sacramento. My brother yesterday, for some of our cultivation permits, he took a bunch of cash to Sacramento. So he had to appear in person. First, he had to make an appointment. Making an appointment is required on most of these things. You're gonna need to make an appointment. Then you're gonna need to appear in person with your ID. You're gonna need to have all the monies facing the same direction. It's like a bank. You're walking into a bank and they want all their money facing the same direction. They want a list of itemized denominations. What that means is if you have $20,000, they want to know how many hundreds you have, how many 50s you have, how many 20s you have, how many 5s, how many 1s, how many 10s. Every single denomination that you have, you will need to accurately itemize. Then you're going to make sure to triple check that for accuracy, because I kid you not, if you go to the BCC and you say, this is $20,000 and it's all hundreds, and they run it through the machine and it's 250s, they will hand all of that money back to you and they will say, make a new appointment. It's just the way the world works right now. So your list of itemized denominations doesn't just have to be there, it has to be 100% accurate. So that's when you take the drive to Sacramento. Your local taxes and state taxes, that's going to be based on your locality. Whatever jurisdiction you got your local authorization in, that's going to be where you're going to need to go and pay those taxes. And you're going to need to appear in person. Typically, you'll pay these quarterly, and you will determine the best way and structure to pay all of these things with your accounting team or your accountant. Definitely do not try to figure these things out by yourself. Payroll taxes, which is super complicated, and another thing, the whole process should depend on whatever is recommended to you by your accountant. And like I said, again, be prepared to prepay those payroll taxes. Okay, so here we're going to get into a lot of the nitty-gritty of what a security plan would include for your location. So when it comes to cash, the security and the physical security measures about your building and about your location is unbelievably important. So you're gonna wanna have really, really concise, accurate information to give the BCC. And that the BCC is gonna look over this information and say, oh, well, maybe he doesn't have enough security. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you have all of these things thought through and on your premise. So let's just go through them pretty cut and dry. Maintaining a well-lit premise and surrounding area. Install exterior locks and controlled access areas utilizing automatic locking. I just want to touch on that. Let's say you have a delivery or a distribution or a cultivation. It really does not matter. and your employees come in and out all day, you are going to want an automatic lock. Just simple, small investment that you can make that's going to secure your building a lot more. You're not going to want to rely on every single driver leaving that, did they lock the door? Who cares? Get a lock that automatically locks and you'll know the door is locked. Utilize prominently displayed security surveillance equipment and signage. Super important. Something as small as the ADT signs or the bail alarm signs all around your premise will definitely deter people. Possibly have a guard on site during business hours. Once again, depending upon the permit that you have, one might be required. Record all visitors and vendors for your business. You're going to need to know every single person coming in and out. Keep emergency contact telephone numbers with the manager and dispatch. All of that information needs to be readily available. Incident forms are kept handy for quick recollection after occurrences. This is another thing that you're going to want to have for your business. You're going to want to have an incident form, and maybe that incident form can actually cover a lot of things, whether it's a car crash or employee insubordination or a robbery, whatever it is. You have this form that can immediately be pulled out and covered for every single type of incident that could happen on your property. Maybe somebody got hurt, who knows? All of those things need to have an incident form. Lunch and breaks are varied for employees so that there's always several employees on duties. That's just one smart thing to do. You wouldn't want to leave one person to run the entire business and be put at risk while everyone else is on lunch. Badges are worn by employees and visitors at all times, and the visitor log is maintained. Once again, not only are you going to log everyone in and out, but every single person that works for you and comes into your business by law must be badged. Identification should be required for entry onto the premise. So it's not necessarily required by the government, but it's just definitely good to go ahead and get a copy of every single person's ID that's coming onto your premise and understanding the reason why they're there. Make sure the premise is cleaned regularly to remove old fingerprints. This increases the possibility that a robber may leave a readable print behind. It's just a really good thing, of course, to just be clean in general, but making sure you can capture any of those new fingerprints. Try to have 2 employees on duties at all times, which is a form of target hardening because it may make a robbery more difficult to complete and therefore more unsuitable to a potential robber. So all of these things are really just what the BCC would like to see. Some version of this is very important because you are handling all this cash and they want to make sure this cash is safe and the product is safe and your employees are safe. So, more information that involves robberies. We're gonna have a couple slides on robberies. It's wordy, but I mean, it's pretty good information. It's pretty interesting. So, procedures during a robbery, during an active robbery, while the robber is still there. Do not resist the robbers. Company valuables are definitely not worth risking your life at any point. Take no action that would jeopardize the safety of personnel. Cooperate with the robber and do not try to become a hero. In most situations, robbers almost never hurt anyone who cooperates. That should be company policy. Do not use or encourage the use of weapons against the robber. Introducing another weapon into the situation increases the chances of someone becoming injured during the robbery. No amount of valuables are worth the risk of endangering a person's life. Try to inform the robber of any surprises. If someone is expected back soon, or if you must reach or move in any way, tell the robber what to expect so that they will not be startled. A suspicious move by an employee may trigger a violent reaction, endangering the lives of many people. Follow the robber's commands, but do not volunteer to help. The longer the robbery takes, the more nervous the robber may become and more apt. If the robber demands a specific amount of money or product, only give them the amount they demand. Try to keep employees calm during a robbery. If the robber displays a firearm or claims to have one, consider it loaded and that they would use it. Try to alert other employees of the situation by using prearranged signals. So that's another thing to talk about is just The best thing that you can do is practice a lot of this stuff with your employees. The security protocols that you have and actually setting forth some practice drills to make sure that all of your employees are following those protocols is definitely a necessity. You can't just expect them to know these things. So be observant. Plan to be a good witness. Try to notice as much as possible about the robber. Make mental notes of the following: the number of robbers, the robber's physical characteristics, race, sex, height, age, weight, facial characteristics, like their head shape, color of the hair, color of their eyes, shape of the eyes, nose, mouth, etc. Speech patterns, if they have any specific accents, scars, marks, deformities, if they're right-handed or left-handed. All these things are just very important to note because it'll give you the highest chance of getting whatever was taken back. So the robber's clothing description, any names used by the robbers, any peculiarities exhibited by the robber, if they smelled like they had alcohol or they appeared to be high on drugs, those types of things. Description of any weapons used. Try to notice maybe the barrel length, or the barrel color, or the color of the grips, or whether the pistol is automatic or a revolver. All of these things are really, really good information for you to be able to give the police. And of course, if you can see it, the color, make, model, etc. of the vehicle used, if there's one used for getaway. So those were things, of course, that were like during an active robbery while the robber was still there. In your BCC security procedures, you're going to have to include what happens after the robbery. So these are things that you're going to want to consider putting in there for once the robber is gone. So the manager on duty is responsible for certain actions if a robbery occurs. They might look for the getaway car, lock the doors, call the police, care for the injured, protect the evidence, all of those things and more. So employees are not to chase or follow the robber. The robber may shoot at any pursuers, or the police may be confused who's the robber. It should be policy they never, ever chase or pursue the robber. Secure the premise so the robbers cannot re-enter. It's always smart. Stop business operations, and if necessary, on your website, turn off deliveries, advising customers that the business is temporarily closed. Do not let anyone in except emergency personnel. Call the police immediately. Be sure to tell them if anyone is injured so that they may dispatch medical personnel if necessary. Give the police the time of the robber's departure, their description and direction and method of travel. Stay on the telephone until they tell you it's okay to hang up. The speed of reporting is critical to the apprehension of the offender. And we all know that, but literally, if you can have your employees trained so they know exactly what to do no matter what happens. Let's say a break-in occurred while no one was there at night, and the first crew there in the morning sees that the glass is broken and all these different doors are busted in. They're going to want to have the best procedures to follow, the quickest. And I can't stress the quickest. So the speed of reporting is very, very critical. And making sure you can catch those people. And of course, caring for any injured people after any sort of incident is also extremely important. So continuing, it's not over. Procedures after a robbery. If it can be safely accomplished as the robbers leave, like we said, try to note the method of escape along with the direction of travel. If a vehicle is used, get the make, the color, the type, the license number, and the state of registration. Try to preserve any potential evidence. Protect the scene of the crime, and do not touch anything the robber may have touched. Keep people out of the area. Write down the description of the robber. Witness description forms can be available to fill descriptive data and other remarks, or if not available, use any available paper. Do not compare notes with others until the police arrive and conduct the necessary interviews. Ask witnesses to remain until the police arrive. If they insist on leaving, try to obtain their names and addresses. Contact any other individuals who may need to be contacted, the owners, the security company, owners of the property, etc. Emergency telephone numbers should be accessible, which this is another good thing, a must for any business. You should have a directory that's accessible to all of the people on site so they can immediately call all of the people that need to be alerted if anything happens on the property. Okay. Police aren't there yet. So do not discuss the crime with outsiders until the police give you permission to do so. Refer all questions to the police. Do not tell or estimate how much money or goods was lost to the robber unless absolutely necessary. The police can always list the amount taken as undetermined amount of cash until the exact amount is determined in an audit. Find out and record anything else that may have been stolen. If an exact amount of cash or goods taken during the robbery should be released to the media and they report a large loss, other robbers could be attracted to the business or others in the chain. And that's a given, right? Let's say somebody comes into your retail shop while you're closed and they steal all of the product and some cash. And the news reports that $2 million or $200,000, let's say, was taken from this retailer. That's then going to make that retailer have to increase all their security times 10 because now they're a huge sitting duck for other people. You know what they say, crime comes back, doesn't strike once. So make sure that if something does happen, you can minimize what does get released. Because a lot of this information would get released to the media, and you're not going to want to have that documented. Assist the investigating officers in every way possible. Cooperate with the police by being available for interviews, not being reluctant to identify suspects, and giving evidence in court when notified to do so. So you're definitely going to want to be as helpful as possible if something was to take place on your premise with the police. All right, moving on. So one thing about cash businesses that we're going to go over is it's not like you can't extend credit or net terms to people to need cash later. So you can definitely have cash on delivery as your primary function, which I would definitely recommend. Cash on delivery is the healthiest way for maintaining expected cash flow. The business only gives product to those that can pay on delivery, therefore limiting any future credit risk. If the business can sustain growth with a COD model, it will have less financial risk, the financial status of any cannabis company. And I can't stress that 1,000,000%, especially right now with the current landscape of cannabis, and who knows where it'll be 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, but you really do not know the status of any of these companies. And if you deliver to a storefront, even if they're the busiest storefront in San Francisco, next thing you know, you come back and they can't pay you. That's going to cause you to not be able to pay your rent, not be able to pay your employees. Some part of your business is going to be stressed if you are planning that expected cash flow and it's not there. Duck here with all the cash. You want to be like Daffy Duck. You want to make sure that you're bringing in the expected cash flow that you have. And the safest way to do that is especially for a small business that can't sustain giving credit to people is cash on delivery. So next is net terms. So in most industries, this is a normal business circumstance. The brand or the distributor offers credit to the retailer based on different lengths of time. And even in other industries, they give you discounts for paying early. So you might get net 14.2% or net 35%, something crazy, like you're getting a large discount for paying early. So the retailer then has time to pay based on whatever the agreed upon terms. So in cannabis today, normal net terms are about net 14 or net 30. You can see as short as net 7 though. Maybe they come back next week to pay. And in cannabis, it's 100% usually the norm for them to collect excise tax. So even if the distribution company is offering credit on that product, the distributor is not offering you credit on the excise tax because that's what the government wants. So usually most distribution companies are not doing that anymore because credit is pretty tight. But currently, if you get net 14 or you get net 30, that's the norm. And that means you have 14 days or 30 days to pay that invoice in full. So this is why it's also very, very important to make sure your collections reports are up to date and your employees are being accountable for accurate collections. So if you're offering net 14, you need to make sure you're picking up that invoice in full in net 14. You don't want that retailer to turn that net 14 into a net 30. That's not going to be a sustainable model for your business. So if you have, just imagine a team of unaccountable drivers dropping off product without checking the collections report over and over, you will go out of business. It's happening every day. I know a lot of distribution companies where half the storefronts in San Francisco owe them $60,000 right now and can't collect. So just making sure that you're on top of that is the sustainability of your business. All checks and balances must be checked every single time. Every single time a driver is going to drop something off, they must double check. Because like I said before, the sales team is always pushing your account to make a sale. They always want to make a sale. That's their job. And it's not their job necessarily to check the past due balances. They're the salespeople. So it's really a true recipe for disaster. And you want to make sure that you are not facing any default payments from a lot of retailers over and over extending credit to them. You really want to be careful who you extend credit to, and there's ways to do that. So we're wrapping up here. All right. Tips and tricks. So things to just keep in mind all the time and things that are specific for your cannabis business. First thing, account for your business daily. Investigate any and all issues, no matter how small. There's always a paper trail. There's always a reason why. If someone's 50 cents short, they think, oh yeah, I gave that guy extra 50 cents. Like there's always a reason. You don't want to have short drawers or over drawers. You don't want to have your daily cycle counts be wrong and you not investigate it. Investigate everything. Set a simple and effective cash handling policy. Remember, most cash loss problems are resolved with accountability. Like I was saying, with the camera, with the money counter, with the counterfeit pin, with the security bags. All of those things are going to really help your business have accountability. Every time something of value, whether it's product or money, moves from one person to another, there should be a paper trail. Make sure to use those tamper-proof bank bags, like I was saying, always and accurately. Make sure to use those bank bags. Cannot stress that enough. Separate and never use tax monies for operations. So just definitely want to touch on that because a small business starts making a good amount of money. Let's say you go from making no money a month to make $5 grand a month, then you're doing 10 grand a month, then you're doing 20 grand a month. And you're recycling all of this, you're reinfusing all of this cash right back into your business, and your business is growing and it's doing really well. It sounds great. But I promise you, when it comes tax time, you're not going to be able to pay your taxes. And then you're going to be facing penalties. So you're going to want to make sure that you're not using tax money for operations. If your driver's dropping off product or picking up payment, make sure to verify the collections report prior and clearly document what invoice this payment applies to. Like I said, this gets so messy. I cannot explain it enough. Make sure you're not only getting all of the information, but you understand what invoice this payment applies to. Because a retailer might place 5 orders, let's say in 2 weeks with a distro, or 10 orders. And when you come, they got $5,000. You need to make sure you're applying that $5,000 to the oldest invoice or to the appropriate invoice or whatever was discussed. You need to make sure it is accurate. And then once again, COD over net terms whenever possible. Can't stress that enough. You're going to want to be COD as much as you can. And when it comes to giving terms, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting all of the credit references and researching their access to capital before extending credit. You're not just going to say, oh, man, John's like, you know, he drives a Mercedes, he's nice to me, we'll go ahead and give him net 14. No, make sure that that company literally can give you, and there's, all you have to do is Google a credit reference form, and you're going to want to have them fill out a credit reference form. And in there, they will have other businesses that they have current credit with, and you'll find out if they're late, if they're current, what their balance is, like what their open balance maximum is. You'll be able to find out how financially sound that business is. And if you can't get those things, I would not recommend offering any net terms. So accounting is key. Once again, you'll be audited. 1000% guaranteed you will be audited at some point. Another really good thing is consider multiple safes for specific purposes. A good example of that would just be, let's say you have a delivery service and your drivers come back at the end of the day, or the end of the shift rather, and you have all this money totaled up from all the drivers. Let's say it's 10 drivers, and that money is going into a safe. You wouldn't want that money going into the same safe that has all of the other money. You would want to have maybe a driver safe and then a master safe, which is how we have 2 of our safes set up at the delivery service, because we don't want the money, we want the master safe to have very, very, very limited access. So maybe the driver safe has more access. And not only that, but it limits your security risk if something was to happen. They would then have to break into 2 safes instead of just 1. Once again, automate when and where you can. So money counters would be the first thing you can automate. Those are not expensive, and you're definitely going to want to have a money counter anytime dealing with large sums of cash. It's going to save you a ton of time. Always use the counterfeit pin. Those are available, and I would definitely suggest all of your drivers having them. Anyone that's sitting there taking cash at any point should have a counterfeit pin. And then, of course, just to, you know, who's going to bodyguard the bodyguard, like they say. Make sure you have a system to check and balance your accounting team. We've all heard of plenty of cases in the world where the business thought they were doing okay, and then next thing you know, the accounting team somehow had spent, or certain individuals had spent a lot of the money without the company being aware. So you wouldn't want that. You'd want to have to make sure, or you'd want to understand you have a good overview of your financials where your accountant team isn't allowed to run without your overview. You want somebody being able to make sure you have a check and balance on your accounting team. So these are just a lot of the things that involve cash on the regular basis. And this is pretty much the end of our presentation tonight. So if we have any other questions or comments, thank you so much. Otherwise, it'll go back to Miss Ange with our final thoughts. And thank you so much for attending. And I hope everybody is staying home, sheltering at home, and staying in place and staying healthy.
Wow. Thank you, Marie. Do we have any questions, Brian?
No new questions at the moment. But since there is a delay of like 30 seconds, I don't know if you want to share any thoughts, Miss Angela, and I'll let you know if anything comes through.
Well, I will share a few thoughts. So this may be part of the new normal. We don't know how long we're going to be out of the office, but I just want to let everybody know that we are still operating. So if you're looking for work in the industry, if you're looking to get your resumes or your bio done, you can schedule time with us, through us, to work on those. Coming up next week, we're going to have another presentation, and I'm hoping that you guys will continue to join us on this platform. We'll have a white labeling presentation. We're having Astor Farms come back and do a presentation with us. And we'll also have Daniel Delafosse, who's an attorney who's going to be speaking. I don't have my notes here, but he's going to be speaking on, I believe, compliance as well. So I just wanted to say that this feels really good to be back with you guys. And I miss you. I'm sure Brian misses you as well.
So much.
But right?
It's getting lonely.
Yes. And then also I want to thank Marie for such a wonderful presentation. And here's my famous line: did y'all learn something? Right?
We don't have any new questions yet, but Isabel mentioned you covered everything anybody would ever need to know about cash handling. Miss you all.
Awesome. All right, Marie. Kudos. Thank you, Isabel.
Mission accomplished.
Yes, mission accomplished. Yes. And so thank you guys so much for joining in. You know, I am a definite Ray Charles fan. And so Marie, if you don't have any other words, I'm going to close it off with let the good times roll.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Woo! Let the good times roll. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.